All right, so next we are at lesson 7. We are talking about the neuron now. So, the neuron is a specialized nerve cell within the nervous system that allows messages to be sent. So, these are sent by electrical chemical signals, meaning that electricity, chemicals are functioning together. They are helping stimulate that neuron and communicate to each other. So, neurotransmitters are the chemical keys that kind of help carry all those messages from one neuron to another. There are over 100 different kinds. I am not expecting you to memorize all 100, but definitely memorize all the ones we talk about and how they are used, okay? So, your brain, an example could be your brain is an orchestra. Every neuron is going to be an instrument. So, they are all part of that orchestra. They all have those similarities. They all have the same kind of function. They're all wearing similar outfits, but they're going to have a slightly different function depending on where they're at. So, if that helps you kind of break it up, think about it, definitely do that. All right. So, our glial cells, they are cells that help provide physical support to the neurons, and they're kind of like the glue that keeps them together. So, 90% of our brain are these cells that are kind of that glue. What they do is they surround the neurons, they help get in nutrients to the neurons. They also clean up remains of neurons that died. So, you guys will find out soon. Neurons do not live your entire lifespan. As you grow and get more information, as you start learning more things, knowledge increases, your neurons will actually die off and make way for new ones. So, what these cells do is they kind of eat up those remains. They make sure that there is still room for that to grow, that you're not just having dead cells still in the brain. And then they also help make sure that the nutrients, all of the important, minerals, things like that, are actually provided to those neurons. So, starting with our neuron, our dendrites are kind of those antennas. So, those kind of crazy looking flaky things at the top, those are branch like extensions. What they do is they help receive electrical messages from other cells. So, they will take in those messages and so forth. What they have on them is they have receptor sites. These receptor sites are essentially signals where if a neurotransmitter comes in, it can lock into that and it will get stuck in that and it will transmit that information. Next, we have the soma. The soma is essentially the cell body. All right, it is the life support. So what it does is it keeps the neuron functional. All right, it helps contain the nucleus. That way, it still has its control center, but it also is responsible for maintaining the cell. So it helps keep the cell structure, the control center safe. It is pretty much the life support of that cell. It's helped keeping it alive. Right, and we do have hundreds of billions of neurons. So they are super tiny. They are microscopic. We have as many neurons as there are stars in the Milky Way. So the next thing we have, if you guys look at that pink arrow, we have the axon. So the axon is just one fiber that extends from the cell body to the terminal endings. And all it does, its job is meant to carry messages out to other cells. So the dendrite, it picked up those messages. The nucleus in the cell body, it was kind of interpreting those messages. Now they're being sent out through the axon. All right. And then if you look around the axon is actually surrounded by those little kind of whitish light purple things. That is actually called your myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath is made up of fatty substances. It wraps around the axon and helps protect the nerve fiber from damage. It also speeds up the messages. So if we start looking at different illnesses, when we start talking about disorders like MS, multiple sclerosis, if you know anyone with that, that means that their myelin sheath around their axon is actually disintegrating. So just like other issues within the body, like where the body begins attacking itself, it is the same kind of idea. So your body starts attacking those fat cells around the myelin or that compose the myelin sheath around the axon, and essentially it starts slowing down those messages. It starts killing off those cells, and that's why people with MS tend to have issues where they can't walk in the future. They may have issues, with other things later on too. All right. So now we're at axon terminal. So the axon terminal, they are those kind of darker purple branches at the end. So what they do is they signify the end of the neuron, They also kind of help keep things in check. Okay. And then you may wonder how neurons are functioning. So we do have a playback error, but when the neuron is encountering another one, it is taking messages in through those dendrites, sending them down their electrical impulses all the way down, and then it's taking out the branches of the terminal or axon terminal to the dendrite of another one. So we talked a little bit about the synapse. What's the point of it? So that's actually the contact point. So that's the meeting point between those two neurons. That's where a dendrite and where an axon terminal is going to meet at. So that is known as synaptic gap, or synapse, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, what's going on there is it is less than a millionth of an inch wide. So it is super, super teeny tiny. You can never see one with your eyes. And basically, though they aren't touching, they are sending the neurotransmitters over. So if it's triggered in your brain, that neurotransmitter neurochemical gets released. It's actually sending it to the receptors on the dendrite of the next one. And that's how it's making its way through your body. So neurons are super interweaved. Even if you could see one, they are super crazy looking. They are super, super interweaved. It's something where you would never really be able to see it with your naked eye. So that's where we're going to go ahead and stop for our neurons. That being said, our next lesson is going to be about neural firing and then neurotransmitters. So I'll see you guys back for our next lesson.